How do I start? Um, okay, the Great American Novel. This is a framework that I've been creating for tabletop role playing games, which will allow a group of players to play out a literary story. Now, too often, I think if you've run role playing games long enough, you start thinking, well, how do I apply literary structure? Well, you're probably not thinking that. That's how a nerd thinks. But what you're thinking is like, I want my story to be about the characters. I want my game to be about people and what they want, what they're going through, and the drama of their interaction. And all I get are these murder hobos that want to kill the goblins. And I would love to have a journey with my characters and my table that informs a story that kind of transcends, your typical action movie game. I know I, for one, have always wanted to. It's sort of a Moby Dick pun, kind of intended to apply character drama more into my games, and there are really really great storytelling games that do an excellent job of this. Protocol comes to mind. There are a litany of games which are designed to do this, but the challenge that I've run into in those games is that it's almost too free range, and so when you don't have a table that's plugged into cooperative storytelling, it can fall flat. And those that are really good at it can pick up a game like Gempinto's Protocol and just run with it, and it'll be an amazing experience, and it'll be awesome and wonderful. But if you get a table that maybe they play more traditional games, or they are used to creating stats that inform what their character can and cannot do, that's a much bigger challenge for players, and it's a big challenge for the game master to try to elevate those players to get into a cooperative storytelling game. Now, when they have a lot of practice, it becomes easier and easier. What I wanted to do was sort of take make a framework that was designed to do this, no matter what kind of player you are, as long as you're following the rules as written, then you'll end up having a character driven experience. That's what the Great American Novel is. It's still in beta, so I'm cobbling it together, but I wanted to at least in this particular video go over what the design goals of this framework is, because make no mistake, this is not a game. I think that when it's done, it will be a game. I mean, you can take it and run whatever particular setting you want. In fact, I've already created a process and a protocol for creating your own setting at the table. We're going to play in 1920s San Francisco, and these are the things that are going on, and these are the conflicts that we're going to have to deal with. These are the types of players or type of characters that we're going to play, and so that's in the framework. So when it's out, you will be able to pick it up and just say, okay, table, what novel do you want to play out, and we'll play it out. But I think that the framework as it stands, it might be, frankly, a little bit too aspirational. I mean, it's going to be hard to go to your table and say, hey guys, let's play the Great American Novel, and they'll be like, great, so we're going to be in the Dust Bowl, and okay, it's a hard pitch, and I've actually confronted this more than once when I've been playtesting it at conventions, trying to explain it in the in the game listings, and trying to pitch it at musterings, and it's like, guy, I don't really want to play Great American Novel. I want to play, something interesting that I don't have to go to school for. So I get it, but the Great American Novel it's about the framework, not about the game. So when the framework is done, that framework can then be applied to whatever story you want to apply it to. and then down the road I will be I'll create settings, which is really where the meat's going to be, and that's going to be where think of the framework as something like Fate, which can run out of the box, but really it shines when you when you make a Dresden accelerated, right? So that's sort of my plan here. And when I started applying it to things like, I think most recently is actually my first attempt at doing this, was applying it to a movie that everybody knows and loves that is rich in storytelling about characters. And so I ran The Godfather at Strategicon this last week, actually. And when you pitch The Godfather, it makes a lot more sense. But if the framework works the same whether you're playing The Godfather or you're playing The Grapes of Wrath. It's the same framework. So just going out of the gates, I wanted to spend this time introducing the idea of the Great American Novel, that I'm working on it, and I'm going to give you some updates as I go on. This is sort of I don't know what this is. This is like a video journal. Just I feel like I should do it, so I'm doing it, and just to bring, because it's a weird idea, and I want to be able to talk everybody through it as the development goes on, so that when it's ready to come out, it's not a big mystery. So I just wanted to real quick talk about what my design goals were for this framework. I think that will clarify what goes on downstream, how the mechanics work, why they work the way they do. Everything comes back to the design goals. I mean, I think the first thing is that, and this is important, that the games, all of the tension and conflict and drama that happens in this game needs to be about the characters. This is not a game where you are fighting bad guys, on the run, protecting villages from monsters. It's not that kind of game. Now, all of those things can happen. That can be part of the setting, but in The Godfather, there were people that got whacked, right? But we weren't rolling, attack rolls. It was the natural course of the story. So it needs to be rooted in characters and in character drama, and anything that happens in the game has to be tied back to a character. So that's the thing. It's not plot focused. It's character focused. So the other thing that has to happen as a design goal is that characters cannot stay the same. If it's a character drama, there needs to be a character arc. They need to change throughout the story. They need to start in a particular way, and they need to finish in a particular way. And all of the characters do. So that needs to be as part of the design. That this needs to be either the character changes for the good or it changes for the worse, but there needs to be a change. And I love the idea of playing one-shot games. And make no mistake, this framework, I don't see how it can work in a campaign. It really does need to be a one-shot structure. But I love the idea of a one-shot game where your character is different by the end. And all the best games that I've played, at conventions, that's been the case, by where the character started a certain way and ended in a different way. The framework needs to work for any character-driven story. It needs to work for certainly The Godfather. It also needs to work for, think about like The Fifth Element. There's some shooting and chases and all that stuff, but it's not about that, and it's not about confronting the big bad. It's about all of the characters and their relationships with one another. It needs to work for the really dark historical dramas, Your Beloved. It needs to work for Moby Dick. It needs to work for Reservoir Dogs. It needs to work for potentially, an Avengers movie where we're not even talking about the superpowers anymore. We're talking about the relationships in between all of the different characters, So it has to be functional no matter what the setting is, as long as the story is about the characters. And I think the last one is that every session needs to feel like a complete story. It needs to have a beginning, a rise to conflict, a climax, a satisfying resolution, even a denouement. It needs to Did I say that word right? It needs to have a nice, fulfilling conclusion. So, so those are the design principles. There needs to be character tension and drama as the focus of the game. It has to work for any character-driven story. The characters got to change, and it needs to be a complete story in every session. So that's the snapshot of what we're getting into. There's going to be some more to come. I'm trying to get some actual plays together. The first one that I actually have on the calendar is going to be at Gauntlet Con, which is a online convention provided by the Gauntlet, which is a wonderful podcast and community. Gauntlet Con, looking at my calendar, is happening in October. I will be running my game on the 21st at 9 a.m. Pacific, and I will be recording that. So that'll be the first actual play. I'm actually doing the framework for Bargo, so that'll be fun. I'm going to also set up more actual plays as time goes on. So just stay tuned. I'm going to be talking more about the mechanics and how the game works and how the framework works in the coming months. So hope you enjoy. Thanks for tuning in, and that's it for now.